My earliest memories were when we moved to North Carolina from Michigan, and we lived in a small green cabin in Sapphire, North Carolina. And it was great. My brother was going to school at the time in T.C. Henderson, where I went to school later. And it was my mom and I most of the time, and we always go for hikes, or I remember making like sun tea and climbing trees and things like that. Um, I think we had a big wood stove in the cabin to keep us warm in the winter, and we didn't have much, but everybody was really happy at that time. We felt really blessed during that time to have what we had.
Well, we first moved to Lakeland when I was 3 months old, and we lived in an apartment. I don't remember a whole lot about that. I remember there being water in the back, and I remember getting a fishing hook stuck in my finger at one point. But that's all I really remember of that, and having Buford, our dog, and then when I was how old was I? I don't know, 5, I guess, when we moved into the Glenridge house, and we spent the majority of my life there.
And then we moved farther out into Whitewater Pines, which is a really big house. And it was drafty, and I believe the highway going from South Carolina into North Carolina was still all gravel. And it would take about an hour plus to get to the nearest grocery store. And our nearest neighbors were the Lighties, and they kind of took us in under their wing and brought us to church in Lake Toxway Baptist Church, and we really were part of that community. And they had a community center. Got to hang out and play with a lot of the kids in the neighborhood, and really met some really good childhood friends. And it was a great time.
A lot of them are full of hanging out in the neighborhood with my little neighborhood gang of all my girls. Tracy Brown, Brittany, Lindsay, climbing the trees, playing, what was that game we made up? Spud, where we'd throw the balls at each other, playing soccer, hanging out with my brothers, hanging out with my parents, going to church. Those are a lot of what fills my childhood.
The majority of that time was just my mom and I. When we, every day we had a routine where we'd go for a walk down the gravel roads. There was a big bald rock that we'd hike to. It had to be, I had little legs, so it might have been a half mile, but to me it felt like it was 3 or 4 miles. And Jason would come home from school. We'd meet him down on 281 down by the road, and I remember cutting wood in the fall for having enough firewood through the winter. And we had a neighbor come over and show us how to plant a garden, and I think we ate probably mostly potatoes for that winter. That after that we had so many potatoes. I think we had potato soup and baked potatoes, and it was we did the best we could with what we had. So that, I think, was a really good time in your life, always being happy and having that family core. I think my mom, Jason, and I, we pulled together. We were always there for each other. And my dad would go out and he'd work hard trying to do the best he could to give us whatever we had.
All of my schools were on one road. So Paget Elementary was the farthest away, and it was about 1.5 to 2 miles down the road. And then I went to Lake Gibson Middle School, which was about 1 mile down the road. And then I went to Lake Gibson High School, which was right next to that. Go Braves. Growing up in my neighborhood, it was awesome. I really enjoyed, I still am friends with pretty much all the girls that I grew up with. We're all at different points in our life. So it's kind of cool to see who's doing what, and some of us are still in Lakeland, some of us aren't still in Lakeland, but the community or the relationships that you build growing up like that is something that a lot of people don't get the opportunity to have, which I love that. Growing up with my siblings, well, Ben is one of my best friends now, but I don't really like him to start with. Well, he spit up on me shortly after he came home, and I had decided at that point that we probably weren't going to be too close. So, I liked Mac a little bit more once he came. He was kind of like my baby. I took care of him and carried him around, and I was the only one who could understand him until he was 5. So I would translate for him quite frequently. And then whenever he would, pick on, or Ben would pick on Mac, I'd stick up for Mac, and it was always kind of me and Mac against Ben. It's not that way anymore. We're all friendly now. But I would have told you that you were wrong if you ever said that I would like them one day.
With my brothers, Jason was a lot older than I was. I always looked up to him, and I always wanted to do the things that he was doing. We would, at Whitewater Pines, when we were living up there in Sapphire, we had these big Tonka trucks. And we had this big bank that we would dig into with those Tonka trucks and make roads and things like that. And he would have it all set up, engineered perfectly with concrete in some places. And I'd always be the guy that came in afterwards and kind of messed it all up and broke things. So he'd have to keep me in my place pretty good. And then with Curtis, when he was born, I really didn't know what to expect too much, but he was born quite a few years after I was, and we kind of had a difference of him being so young, and we didn't really play together. We didn't really know what to do with each other, so he'd want to be doing anything that I was doing, and so I'd tease and torment him a little bit, just like Jason would do to me. I definitely learned from the best when it came to that. And then Ian was born just a few years after Curtis. And so it seems like they ganged up and really found ways to get in my way and do things, and kind of be involved with whatever I was doing.
My newer siblings, I didn't ever get to live with them, but they're hilarious. Jake literally cracks me up. My favorite has probably been lately, since they've been pulling all of the weeds and leaves off of plants and flowers off of things and saving them for my wedding. That's been my favorite. But watching them grow up has been kind of the coolest thing, because I get to do it as a sibling, but I'm still old enough to watch them grow as if they were my children too, which is kind of a cool perspective that you don't really get with siblings. I wouldn't trade them for anything.
I went off to school, and I didn't really get to see my brothers too much for quite a while. We'd take vacations every summer up to Michigan and things like that, but we kind of lost touch for quite a bit. I was working all the time. I was working crazy hours in one restaurant or another, and I was living in Charleston or Jacksonville or all over the East Coast. And kept on losing touch with them, and we'd call each other every now and then. And now it's just amazing how, especially in the last 2 years, how much time that we've had to spend together. And really, those Jason, Curtis, and Ian are really my best friends. I'd do anything for them, and I look forward to every time I get together, and we've spent more time together in this last couple of years than I think we have in last 10. So it's fantastic. We all kind of had different experiences growing up, and we were spaced so far apart, but it's amazing how close we are together right now.
Well, I have my dad, and he's my best friend. And his wife is Claudia, and she's my stepmom, and I like her too. She's helped do a lot of the wedding decorations and stuff. She is my go-to expert when it comes to all things style. She knows what's going on. And then there's my mom, and we're best friends too. And she's married to Joey, and he's very funny. and I have a really, really good group of parents. There's not one of them that I couldn't go to if I needed something.
My parents are, I think they showed me a lot. In the beginning, when we first moved from Michigan to North Carolina, it was hard. It was hard for both of them. And my mom was staying at home, and my dad was going out and working, whatever he could, finding jobs, and he was building when he first got there. He showed me that you go out there and you work hard, and you don't always pull ahead, but you just keep going. You keep going and you work hard, and eventually it'll work out. And just to see my mom, she cared for us so much. She was an amazing woman. Just helped us, reading with her experiences. She was funny, and I think she enjoyed tormenting us a little bit with some things, but we got a lot of character because of her. And I think one of my favorite, a couple favorite things that I learned from my parents, and what I truly respect the most is no matter what I did, and I definitely challenged them for some of the things that I did to them, or they had to clean up after me because of. No matter what I did, they always, there was definitely punishment, but they always loved me, no matter what. They were right there with me, and they never turned their back, or they were right there with me all the time. And then learning that from my mom, and my dad, they definitely had their own hard times together, but they stuck it out, through the good times and through the bad times. They were there together, and they were a great team, an absolute great team.
My grandparents, I didn't get to see them too much growing up, not like Jake and Millie do now, because they live here in Lakeland, but I used to get to go spend good amounts of time with them. And obviously a lot of that time was spent at whatever corps they were stationed at, or whatever, Salvation Army post they were assigned to at that point. But a lot of who I am comes from them, and a lot of that is because my parents are they're examples of who my grandparents are. I'm so grateful for, I have all of my 4 grandparents are still living, and I wouldn't trade any of them. They all have unique features about them that I just absolutely adore. My grandfather is hilarious. My grandmother got the servant's heart of God. She is incredible. My grandpa is one of the smartest businessmen I know, and he's just crazy intelligent when it comes to any type of investing, or he's just so smart when it comes to that. He's also a very good fisherman. And my grandma, she just exudes love. Like, there's not a thing about her that doesn't say Christ's love. And that's just, what better examples for a kid to grow up with?
One of my favorite memories with my parents, my mom seemed to be pretty carefree. She is very carefree. She can kind of live in the moment. And my dad would come home from work, and he'd just gather us all up, my brothers and my mom and I, and we'd take off to go somewhere. We had some routines, like every Sunday we'd go down to South Carolina and swim in Lake Keowee. Then other times he had some property that he was looking at, and he'd pile us all in the car, and we'd drive for hours, driving around the mountain roads and looking for something new. But it was always, you never knew quite what to expect. He had no problem picking up and going at a moment's notice. We'd planned to go up to Michigan, and we did. We went to Michigan twice a year. And no matter what was going on in our personal lives, we'd always make that time to go up there. And we'd say that we were going to leave on a Thursday, and my dad would come home on a Tuesday and say that we're going in an hour. And we would pack up everything the fast we could, as we could, and and take off and go. So I think those are great memories I have of them.
I can remember in Alabama going swimming with my grandmother. My grandfather, some of my favorite memories with him are just recently, just some of the funny things that he says. And then my grandpa, like just again recently going fishing with him on deep sea fishing trips, and when we go out to the park and we've gone fishing, and because I get to spend more time with them, I'm creating more memories now than when I can remember of being young. Oh, and getting my grandma to put the worm on the fishing hook for me at their Panama house and taking the fish off too.
I think what I appreciate the most is my mom always taking me to church every Sunday. I think church was a big part of our lives, and I think it was the values that we learned there, and the commitment of what we have in our lives, and what truly, what our lives truly mean, and what we're supposed to be doing, and what is right and what is wrong, and what love is in the community. If somebody was sick or if somebody had passed away, we'd go over there and help those families, and just a real strong conviction, and I think that's where she got most of her strength, and watching what the church brought into our family, and what it did to my parents, and how it's helped them make it this long in their marriage. And I think it in large part, those values is what keeps my brothers and I so close together as well. We'd all have a definite vision of where what we should be doing, and what life we should be living. And I think for the most part, all of our family, we live, through Christ, and we are doing the right things with our family.
The thing I appreciate most about being raised is the fact that I was raised in the Salvation Army, that I got to see a lot of what people were going through that weren't necessarily in my neighborhood or in my school, or something that I would be exposed to in a regular life if I didn't go to the Salvation Army. So that was it's made me a lot of the things that I am today are because I was able to have exposure to that growing up. Just appreciating people for actually being people, and not judging them based off of the color of their skin or their income, or I was able to get to know them as real people versus what society generalizes people as now based off of whatever circumstances they are. He's gonna tell you that I picked him up at my job. I met Ross at my job, but I did not pick him up there. I mean, I guess I kind of did, but I really didn't.
I met Afton. I moved down here to move to Bartow, which was a pretty rough town. I didn't really know too much about Central Florida or anything around here. And I started a job working out at Streamsong Resort, and shortly after I got there, my manager passed away. So I had to take over food and beverage operations out there at the clubhouse on the resort. And so I was working crazy hours. I was working 7 days a week, 6-7 days a week, and 16-18 hours a day. And so I was exhausted. And I got out early one day, and I was driving up to Bartow, and I needed a phone. And so I knew that was the only Verizon place that I knew of in town. And I stopped in and immediately got greeted by Afton. And she brought me over to her desk and was asking about what I had, and I showed her my phone.
He came in to get a new phone. Well, he had come into, I worked at Verizon, and he had come in a couple nights before because he was having problems with his phone, but the person didn't sell him on a new phone. So he left, came back in a couple days later, and it was my turn to have a person. And so I met him halfway through the store and introduced myself and brought him back to my desk. And he had broken his phone that he was so dearly attached to.
It was the funniest thing. My phone had, slipped open, and it had a keyboard in it, and it barely worked. And she laughed. She has a way of laughing at you, but you feel uncomfortable with it. I think she started in on that right from the beginning, and then she was talking about, what are you looking for, and how is this, what do you use it for, and things like that. And so I told her that I was just looking for another phone with a keyboard in it. That's really all I wanted. And she laughed and said, "Oh, no, you don't want that." And so she finally showed me a few different options that I should be getting, and I started seeing. I mean, she's a salesperson. She knows what she's doing, and she gets passionate about whatever she has and what she's trying to sell. I don't think it was really about the money. I think it was that she just knows what she's talking about, and she wants you to experience exactly what she has, and she gets so excited about it. You want to be part of that. And so I just listened to her and kind of let her do. I was like, okay, yeah, I'll do that.
So I sold him a new phone. Well, in the process, he had told me that he had just moved to Lakeland 3 days prior, and after having to plug in his information, I figured out that he lived half a block away from me.
And when we were going through the address part, I had moved into Lakeland, half a block from where she was living in downtown Lakeland. And, just Afton being Afton, she's like, "Hey, if you ever want to go out and hang out again, let me know. And, if you have any questions about your phone or anything else, just let me know."
So I invited him to come hang out with me and my friends downtown so that he could meet some people and make some new friends. I was not trying to pick him up. I was just trying to be nice.
I'd say about 2 or 3 days later, she was wanting to meet me up in downtown Lakeland, and we were going to relax and try. I hadn't been downtown Lakeland and seen anything, and she said she's going to go out with a couple of friends and hang out, so I could hang out with her.
We were supposed to go hang out on Friday, my roommate Kristen and I, and her friend Heather. Well, Heather ended up canceling on her, and so then she decided that she wasn't going to come back into town from Ocala. So I told her, yes, she was coming back into town because this guy was going to think I was tricking him into a date. So right about the time that Kristen and I were having this conversation over text message, Ross text messages me and says, "Okay, I'm out of work and I'm on my way." So I knew that gave me about 45 minutes. So I told him, "Just so you know, my roommate's friend canceled on her, and so she's not going to be back in town right away. I'm still down to hang out, but you'll be stuck with just me." And his response was, "That doesn't sound like a bad place to be stuck." It's like, huh? What? I don't understand. So turns out he liked me.
And so I get up there, and it's just Afton at the bar, and I'm like looking around, and I'm like, okay, I thought it was great. I mean, she's very cool, and I was looking for her friends, and I was like, I told her I thought she was tricking me into a date. Like I didn't even know. I was like, okay, and her roommate Kristen came along after a while, and we all hung out and we had a good time, and then the next day, I think we hung out again. The next day, we did something else, and then the next day, and the more I hung out with her, you just feel comfortable. She's part of your family, or her friends are all part of her family. It's just who she is. She kind of pulls you in and makes you feel relaxed. And when she's around the guys, she can throw down with the guys. I mean, she can definitely hold her own in any situation. And I think the more I hung out with her, the more I liked her, and the more I wanted to be around her more. And I tell you, I grew to love her really, really fast.
My first impression of Ross, which I've never told to anyone, was actually that he would be a good fit for Kristen if it didn't work out with Andy. I've never told anyone that. He was just super sweet, and he was funny. He was kind of quiet. There's a good chance it's because I was talking the whole time. I loved when we first hung out. One of the things that he did was told me that he walked into the women's restroom on our first hangout. And so whenever he came back and told me that, he was just like, yeah, I just went into the ladies' room. I thought that was one of my favorite moments. That he was just so open about it, and you knew he had such a good heart and a good sense of humor just from that.
And so we kept on hanging out, and I just felt comfortable. I felt right. The more I spent time with her, the more I felt right with it. And I don't think I'd felt love in quite a while, and so I had to figure out what it was that I was what I was feeling. And I think I was sitting at home one day, and I was really thinking about it, and I think I knew I had to let down quite a few walls and jump into this, and I'm glad I did.
This is such a sweet story of how I knew that I loved Ross. So after the initial hangout, Kristen joined us when we were hanging out, and that was when Ross was in the ladies' room. And I had turned to Kristen and said, listen to what he's saying. He keeps saying things that makes me think that he might like me, but I'm still not 100% sure. Just listen to what he's saying and see what you think. We'll talk about it after. So he came up, and we spent the rest of the evening, and after he left, she was like, oh yeah, he definitely likes you. And so I was like, I think that, but I'm still not 100% sure. Well, the next time he had talked to me, he asked if we could hang out again. So that was what we consider our first official date. We walked around Lake Morton, and one of our favorite trees had just been knocked over by a storm, and the roots were exposed. So the city came and chopped it up. And I was telling him about this big, beautiful tree and how sad I was that they had cut it up. We used to come climb the tree, in the middle of the night, just hang out, sit. You could look over the lake. It was perfect. So I was telling him about this tree. And then about a month and a half later, it was my birthday. And for my birthday, he contacted the city, found out what type of tree it was, and had it replanted in that spot in my honor. And that's when I knew. That's when I knew that this guy was the one.
I think we had been together for about 8 months, and everything that I did, it didn't matter how, how weird it was or crazy it was, or I always felt comfortable. I always felt comfortable with her, and the more I hung out with her, the more I loved her, and she wanted to meet my family. I mean, she jumped in the car and we drove up to North Carolina together. I think that was only like 3 months after we had met, and I'd meet my brothers in out on the Gulf, and she'd want to be part of that, and she brought me into her family, and we'd go and do things. We'd go and watch movies right on Lake Mirror, and it's part of her birthday. And got to meet her grandparents and Millie and Jake, which are absolutely fantastic, and then her brothers, and hanging out with you and Claudia has been absolutely fantastic. I enjoyed it from the beginning, and I think for the most part, I enjoy. I learned that I love to laugh at myself, and whenever I hang out with Afton or anybody from Afton's family, they definitely know how to laugh at me too. So so it's always a good time over there, and there's always something different going on with her family and what they're doing, and it's all about love though, and the same values that I grew up with are deeply embedded in her family. And she was raised in the church. Both of her grandparents being in the church was huge in her life, and her parents growing up in the church. And I think she had to learn what the church was to her and what her faith was, because of a few times in her life, she getting into trouble or having questions about her faith and religion and where it should be in her life. And I think we were on the same page. We were kind of in the same place, and I wanted to go back to church, and I love it. She wants to pull me in every Sunday, and it's something that hadn't been part of my life in 15, 18 years. The church wasn't part of my life, and I had a big thing missing in my life. And to know when I go home and hang out with my mom and my dad, or if I go and hang out with her family, that's just what you do. You go in and you go to church, and you it's just a big part of our lives.
I love Ross's family. They are some of the kindest, funniest people I've ever met. So with Ross having 3 brothers, I have 2 brothers at that point, and that I grew up with. So I got the boy thing. Like, I understand it. I can roughhouse. I can joke. I can take a hit or two. I've got that. So one of the funniest things that happened with his family is when I first went there, and I was getting ready, and I didn't know who all was there because we had arrived at like 7 a.m. So everyone was still sleeping, and so I didn't know which brothers were there and which brothers weren't. From my understanding, I was just going to meet Kurt and Jason and his parents. So I was getting ready, and Ross walks in with this baby, and she's staring at me, and I just looked at him and I said, "That's the one that belongs to the brother that's not supposed to be here." So I knew then that everyone was there. And so I'm getting ready thinking that every single person is sitting upstairs waiting for me to be done getting ready and walking in to say hi. So I panicked a little bit. Tried to call my mom, she didn't answer. Tried to call my best friend, she didn't answer. Tried to call my roommate, she didn't answer. And I just could not get a hold of somebody to calm me down. So I called my friend Laura, and she told me, she said, "It's okay. You're awesome. They're going to love you. They're fantastic. It'll be great."
I think there were many moments, how you look at your life in 5 years, and you look at your life in 10, and you look at the people around us, the people we were surrounding ourselves with, and seeing their relationships and how that was. I didn't want to be with anybody else. I wasn't looking for anything. I wasn't wanting anything more than what she had and who she was, and I felt lucky to be with her at any moment. So I think that I think the feeling kind of grew. There wasn't a moment, but I knew that whenever I wasn't around her, that I didn't feel as good. So I think that we've kind of grown together in that respect.
One of the things that I look most forward to spending the rest of my life with him is watching his humor as he gets older. He's a very, very funny character. He comes up with the funniest one-liners, and maybe nobody else thinks he's funny, but I think he's hilarious. And I'm so looking forward to watching that humor as he cares less and less about what other people think. As you get older, you just kind of live your life the way you want and you have less regard for what anyone else's thoughts on your life are. So I can't wait to watch how that humor just changes over time. I think that will be the thing that I look forward to most.
What I'm looking forward to with spending the rest of my life with Afton is having a family and having a family of our own. And we always talk about the way we're going to raise our family and kind of the funny things that our parents did to us, and we try thinking of new and worse things to do to our kids to give them character. I think that's very, very important for the two of us. And it's funny, we travel and we do fun things all the time, and I know that that's going to be part of our future. We haven't made too many trips lately, getting ready for our wedding, but I can, even by not going anywhere, it seems like we're always doing something. There's always something fun going on, and we like every day with Afton is a good day for me. So I think that just being around her and being close to her, I think that's what I'm looking forward to.
My favorite NFL football team is the Cowboys.
My favorite NFL team growing up was the Lions. We were from Michigan, and we always watched the Lions. I remember Thanksgiving, we'd wake up, and I think the whole day was eating turkey and then having the Lions on the TV. So that's I think that's our family team, and I never really got too far from that. I got told that if I'm going to be part of this family, though, the Tritton family, I needed to be a Cowboys fan. So I'm working on it. I think they both have blue as colors in there somewhere. So I think I can get into it.
How am I going to convince Ross that the Cowboys is his favorite team? I think that when he can name two players from the Lions, then I have something to worry about. Until then, I'm not worried.